I've been making YouTube videos for almost 15 years now, and this is everything that I wish I had known when I was just a beginner. So when I sit down with people and I help them start channels, the biggest question that I get initially starting out is, should you do shorts or should you do long videos? And the answer to this question kind of depends on where you're at in the process. So if you're brand new, generally I like people to do shorts at the very beginning, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The first is because you get a faster feedback loop. If you're doing 30 to 60 second videos, it's way easier for you to make 20 of those and get them uploaded and then figure out which one performed highest and lean more into that. With long form, it's a lot more of a high barrier to entry because you have so much more time and effort. You've got title and thumbnail to consider. So the easiest way that I can do it is that if you're a beginner, start on shorts, because long form is kind of the hard mode of social media. And while we're talking about the feedback loop, like being able to do volume when you're very, very starting out is just insanely valuable, man. So let's say that this is where my audience is at and that this is where your audience is. If let's say I'm posting one video a week and you are also over here posting one video a week, you will only really match the skill set that I've got, right? You won't ever really get past that. Whereas if you're competing with me on my one video a week and you are now doing 7, that means that you are learning and getting better 7 times faster than me. And so you may not catch up to me tomorrow, but you may catch up to me in 6 months. And then 6 more months after that, you are so far ahead that I have no hope of ever catching up to you. When you're just starting out, you need those faster feedback loops, because that's the thing that's gonna actually keep you on the bike and keep you making videos. Because if you put all of your effort into one 20-minute video and it bombs, you're probably not going to want to make another one after that. So by and large, those are the benefits of actually making content via shorts. You get faster feedback loops, you can play the volume game. It's just a little bit easier if you're brand new to getting started. Now, when we're talking about longs, this is where things get interesting. So now on top of all of the things you have to account for with shorts, right, where you have to have like your hook and you have to put that into value, right? You still have to do all of that stuff. With long form, now you have this extra thing where now you have to do title and thumbnail. Title thumbnail is super important because it's basically the top of your funnel. So forgive my super crude drawing of this funnel, but the idea is that the higher up you are in this thing, it's the earliest part of the process. And this is like where you get the most exposure. This is where the most eyeballs come. The very first thing that people see is going to be this title thumbnail, right? So if they don't get past the title thumbnail, they never get to the hook. If they never pass the hook, then they never get to the meat and potatoes of the video. And if they never get to the meat and potatoes of the video, they haven't been provided value, and then they don't subscribe. So if you know that if nobody passes this stage, that none of this ever even gets seen, it's reasonable to assume that all of our time and energy will be spent right here. More often than not, what new YouTubers do is that they go through, they have a crazy idea, they sit down, they record it, they edit the entire thing, they go into the upload thing, and then right at the last minute, they're like, oh, I guess I need a title thumbnail, don't I? And then they just hodgepodge something together, right? So new creators do title thumbnail at the very last when all of the top best creators are doing it at the very beginning. And they're spending a disproportionate amount of time on these elements compared to everything else, because what big YouTubers understand is that if nobody watches this stuff at the top of the funnel, they'll never get to the rest of it. So this just gives you an idea of how much more complexity comes with doing long form versus short, right? You can't really play the volume game as effectively if you're a beginner doing longs. So to review on this for a second, if you're brand new starting out, always do shorts and play the volume game. If you're a little bit more experienced, you understand the title and thumbnail game, at that point you can go ahead and start doing longs, because there are more benefits to doing longs over shorts, which I'll get into when I talk about money. So let's talk about what the goal of the channel is. And I imagine this kind of being split up amongst 2 different types of people, right? You've got the creator, and then you've got businesses. Now, a lot of people may think that these are fairly similar, but they actually couldn't be more different, because one, the creator is just trying to like farm impressions, right? Your goal is to get as many people as humanly possible to watch your content. Businesses have a totally different goal, meaning that they don't want all of the eyeballs, but they have a very particular set of eyeballs that they're trying to attract. So I've now been on both sides of this camp. That play button over there, I got on the creator side, and the second one that I got on the business side. So I've gotten to see the pros and cons of both. Some of the pitfalls I see creators fall into is that money is kind of hard to make for a few different reasons. Monetizing through AdSense has got to be the single least efficient way of making money as a person on social media. There's just not much of it, especially if you're making short form, because now you're like sharing ad revenue with all these other videos as opposed to long forms where you have a little bit more, but it's still not super great. No bueno. And so those guys try to sell merch. I did this. Maybe some of them have a product, but then they're trying to go like really wide mass market, and you just need a lot of money for that. And the last thing is that they kind of struggle with relevancy after a while, or at least I really did. I was really niched down into particular video games when I was doing the content creator thing full time. And what I would find is that I would get into a niche, it would blow up really big, and then I would kind of fall out, and then I'd have to scramble and find something new. And then I'd jump to something new, and then it would go pretty big, and then it would start to fall, and then I'd have to go look around. And then I'd find something else. And it's like, you kind of see this is getting repetitive now. And generally, those guys are doing fairly wide audiences because that's the name of the game as a creator. Little side note, you could also separate these out by entertainers and educators. Now, the strategy for a business is absolutely different, because if I sell lawn care services in Austin, Texas, I may not necessarily benefit from all of the eyeballs that social media has. But the most valuable eyeballs to me are homeowners with grown lawns in Austin, Texas. And so because we go a little bit narrower on the audience, but they're higher quality, the money on the business side is actually a lot easier because there's a very clear value proposition there, as opposed to, hey, I know you like watching me play super happy fun time video game on TikTok, but how about pink sauce? It doesn't always work. Now for businesses, this is a lot easier because you just kind of have like your general services. And then these guys don't really rely as much on relevancy as much as they rely on just providing sheer amounts of value to their ideal prospect. So this content is usually very value driven, and they don't really have as much problems with the relevancy piece. So if you are a creator, there are other ways that you can monetize and make money. Like you've got sponsors, you got affiliates, and things like that, but you already have to have the audience. It's kind of a prerequisite for it. I could sit here and I could talk about this all day, but the TLDR is that you really want to have a good idea of whether you're coming in as a creator or if you're going to leverage it as a business, because the strategy is totally different depending on which one. And as you can see, there are upsides and downsides regardless of which path you take. Next, I want to talk about algorithm stuff, and I won't spend a crazy amount of time on algorithm stuff because I don't know that it really matters. But knowing at a baseline how your content's getting served on these social platforms is important to kind of optimizing it. So I'll share with you what I've found. So the first thing you got to keep in mind is that the goal of these platforms is to keep people on the website for longer. That is their goal. If you can align your content with that goal, you will perform much better. So generally what they're looking for is there's two big metrics that they're looking for here, right? If you're doing long form, they're looking for CTR. This is the click-through rate. This is the ratio of how many people see your title thumbnail compared to the people that actually click on the thing. And then the next thing that they're looking for is AVD, the average view duration. Because if you have two 10-minute videos, one of them's only been watched for 30 seconds, but the other one's been watched for 8 minutes. YouTube is going to think, oh snap, that 8-minute video, people really like that, and they're going to serve it to more people. So these two metrics are your North Star. If you're making long form content, these are the two to look for. If you're doing short form, you're really just looking at AVD. So here's the big and tall of how content algorithms actually serve stuff. So let's say I make my YouTube video, my lovely, well-drawn and well-animated YouTube video. When that video goes out, it actually sends that video out to a small sample audience. These are all my little people right here, right? And so there's two things to keep in mind with this sample audience. If you're new, the sample audience is pretty much random. But if you're not, the sample audience is typically your viewers, your already existing audience. And so of this sample audience that it's shown it to, let's say that this guy here actually watches it all the way through. YouTube's going to be like, oh, so this guy who's interested in this thing and this thing and this thing really like this video. Well, why don't we show the video to more people like them? And so that's exactly what it does. My people are starting to get worse. And then it starts to get a little bit more niched out. And so this continues to kind of spread out, and it keeps showing it to people that are similar to it until the audience gets broader and broader and broader, and eventually there's nobody else relevant to show the video to, and you'll see the viewership die down. And this is one of the big reasons why you hear every single person who gives social media advice tell you to niche down, because if your content is too broad, it may just not appeal to anybody in the sample audience, and it's not going to perform. So niching down in the beginning is super, super important, and we'll talk more about that actually right now. Oh, and by the way, if you are a content creator and you want to be around other people that are making content too, you should go and check out Creator Academy. It is a free group that I've put together over on School, where we're trying to get other creators that are just like you so that you can be in the same space as other people that are doing the thing that you're doing. So if you are a creator who wants to meet more creators, click the first link in the description and go join. It's free. I'll see you guys over there. So if you're in the business world, you've probably heard the term "the riches are in the niches." I thought it was dumb, but it's actually accurate. And it's true, because with niches, you can provide more value. And I'll give you an example. Let's take this exact video for an example. If I made this video on social media, and then I made another video on food reviews, and then I made another video playing video games, right? I'm so spread out that I don't really provide consistent value to any one particular person, right? If we look at this, right, it's all just kind of scattered, right? There's no uniformity to it. But if I say only make content that provides value to small YouTubers who are looking to get started, I can compound that value a lot more. So using that logic, serving one type of viewer is going to actually give them more value than me serving a bunch of different ones at the same time. I mean, the saying's true, man. A jack of all trades really is a master of none. Now, there's a subsection here on niche that I want to talk about, and it's what happens when you have one niche and you want to jump to another. I did this a bunch in the gaming space, where I would have one game and I would jump to another, do well, and then jump to another. The first thing I want to do is I want to differentiate jumping to something that's totally new, and then instead pivoting to something adjacent. To jump back to the previous example, if I built my entire audience on this channel just on talking about social media and YouTube, and I build 10,000 followers off of that, if I then go and start making food review videos, it's not adjacent, and so a good chunk of that audience probably isn't going to track over. However, if I started off making YouTube advice and then I do something adjacent like TikTok or Instagram advice, those are fairly close by. And so my audience that likes the YouTube tips will probably also want to go watch the Instagram stuff. I know you're probably sitting here, you're like, Dan, like, duh, everybody knows this, but like, I didn't know this, man. And I lost years and years of my life because I didn't understand this one thing. And just to give you one more good example of what it looks like when it's done right. So imagine you have a cooking channel, right? And they want to pivot over. Now, again, if they go from cooking and they start reviewing hotels, not a super close relation there. But if they instead go from making cooking content to food review, there's probably some crossover there, and so that transition is going to be a lot more fluid. All right, the last thing I want to touch on is I want to dispel a handful of myths that I have heard over the years and that I continue to hear today. So the first fella on the chopping block is hashtags. In my experience, hashtags don't do much. The problem is that they used to, because before we had social media algorithms that were serving our content on a platform we could just scroll from video to video, the only way that we had to actually find specific content was through hashtags. If I wanted to watch content about, if I wanted to watch content about beaches, right? And I wanted to know like everything about the beach, I wanted to see photos of the beaches, I would reasonably go to hashtag beaches. And that's where all of the content about beaches would be. Same thing if I was looking for fitness, gaming, or basically anything else for that matter. So there was a period of time where hashtags were the primary way for people to find your content, but the way that we've consumed content's really, really different now. These algorithms are so good that if they know that you consistently watch all the way through videos about beaches, not only will that video get sent out to more people, but you will subsequently get served more and more and more videos about beaches. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's absolutely zero effect happening whenever you use hashtags, but I can almost guarantee you that it is not the one thing that is stopping you from getting content over the line. It is not the one thing that is stopping you and holding you back, right? Because what a lot of people like to do is that they blame these hashtags, or they blame the algorithm, or they blame getting shadow banned, but it's really just a fallacy of an excuse because they don't want to admit that their content's not where it needs to be. I'm just being super real with you, man. And so hashtags are a thing that I don't think you should spend much time on, if any at all. And if we're being really controversial, when we're talking about shorts, I actually don't think that the caption is that much different, because I uploaded a video for somebody and I messed up the caption. It was supposed to be a part 2 of a video that had done really well before, and I accidentally titled it PT, all caps. That's it. And we had a big conversation internally about, should we take this video down? Should we change the title? Should we do whatever? And the reason why we were so up in arms about it is because I got 4.2 million views with that title. So like, I can promise you guys, like, this little bitty stuff is not the thing you guys really need to be spending all of your time on. If you're doing short form, you need to be doing a lot of volume at a bare minimum 1 a day, ideally 2 to 3 a day, depending on the platform. And if you're doing longs, 60 to 80% of your time when you're making longs should be spent on your title and thumbnail, how the first 8 seconds of your video transition off of that title and thumbnail, and then you start getting into what are the points I'm going to talk about, what is the value I'm going to give, and all of that stuff. But so much of your time needs to be spent on that first chunk, because that's what's top of funnel. So I hope that this video was valuable to somebody here. If it was, click subscribe. I've got more stuff on the way, and go join Creator Academy, because that's where all the cool kids are. Later.